start talking about the types of organic molecules. As you can see from this list, there are, in biology, the types of organic molecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And we are going to go through them one at a time. Notice that this list looks a whole lot like the back of a food box where they list all the list of the nutrients that you need, because these are all the things that biological systems make and need for survival. They of course include, like we were talking about last time, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and some of them have some other components as well. And so you want to kind of pay attention to their basic structure and what kind of molecules or what kind of atoms they include. So we're going to start by going through carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have three major classes: the monosaccharides, the disaccharides, and the polysaccharides. So we're going to start with the monosaccharides. First of all, let's just look at this overhead here. You can see that from this overhead, these are the different configurations of different types of sugars. Probably the smallest type of sugar that you can see is about 3 carbons long, and usually they're somewhere on the order of 5 or 6 carbons long. And they usually, they always, like in their straight or unringed format, they will include a carbonyl on the end. So notice that these right here are aldehydes, that is, they have the carbonyl on the end, or these are ketones, or they have the carbonyl in the middle. Also, they have a lot of hydroxyls as part of their functional group, and of course just plain hydrogens attached. And notice that some of the differences are where those things are attached. In other words, where the hydroxyls and the hydrogens are attached to the molecule. Now, these are all in the straight format. In other words, these are not really how they exist most of the time. Most of the time, they are going to exist in the ring format. So what's going to happen is they are going to ring up like this, and you can see that the carbons basically are on the corners of the ring. In this case, you have a carbon hanging off of the top part of this one, and they are joined by an oxygen over here. They number the carbons. So this is the usual format that you can see, and they do notice how they don't put the carbons in the corners there. They just assume that you know that that's the case in a ring format, and they number them starting over here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th carbon is hanging off. So this is a 6-carbon straight form that has ringed up and made a 6-carbon sugar. Okay, so this is a simple monosaccharide, and monosaccharides are, like we use them in the broken down form in our body. A typical monosaccharide is glucose, and that's one that you're going to hear us talk about a lot, but here's some other ones: fructose, galactose, and so forth. Okay? So the next kind is a disaccharide. Disaccharide, the term mono means one, di means two, and poly means many. So the disaccharide, as you might expect, is 2 of them joined together. So let's talk about how they join together. So over here are examples of disaccharides. Maltose and sucrose are examples of disaccharides. And in order to make maltose, for example, you're going to put glucose and glucose together. Now, what happens is that this hydrogen here is removed from this molecule, and this hydroxyl over here is removed from this one, making water. So you're taking, in essence, a molecule of water out, and therefore the process that joins the two is called dehydration synthesis. And what's going to happen is it's going to be then leaving that oxygen as the joiner between the two. Now, dehydration synthesis is an endergonic reaction. That is, it requires energy. That energy is going to be somewhat, or at least a lot of that energy is going to be stored in the bond that is created between these two molecules. Therefore, these molecules are energy storage molecules. All right. Now, dehydration synthesis is also responsible for putting together most of the organic molecules. And in this case, this is making sucrose. This is glucose and fructose. So these are just slightly different versions of sugars that are being put together. And they are going to still use the removal of water or dehydration synthesis to create the disaccharide. Okay. So notice also, I forgot to say that this is the glycosidic link. So glycogen is a form of, we're going to talk about a polysaccharide, and that's named after this concept of glycosidic link. All right, so in terms of organic molecules, I just want to mention, in this case, you're kind of seeing how the different sugars are put together, and that dehydration synthesis is the thing that puts them together. And to create a polymer, which is like 3+ sugars put together, you're going to be doing a lot of dehydration synthesis, a lot of energy storage, and the monomers that were creating this are put together to make a polymer. So this is what we call the monomer concept going into a polymer. So the monomer in this case would be a monosaccharide, and the polymer would be many monosaccharides put together, or a polysaccharide, right? All right, so, and this is going to be, this concept of monomer, polymer also happens in some of the other organic molecules, right? So in terms of the polysaccharide, so here we go, we're talking about a typical polysaccharide, which is made up of a lot of glucose molecules put together by dehydration synthesis and many monomers put together. And this is going to make a polysaccharide known as starch. Starch is a very common polysaccharide. And in our bodies, glycogen would be the starch that we make. This is another form of polysaccharide. Notice that there's many lines of these polysaccharides put together, and then they are joined together also in this direction. This is cellulose. Cellulose is one of the most common substances on the planet, and it makes strands of what they call microfibrils of these of these polysaccharides. And those strands are basically like what makes wood. And you probably have seen the somewhat strand nature in the wood, not just of the vessels of the wood, but the actual wood, or the parts of the cell walls that are making up a lot of the wood. So anyway, this is a kind of a close-up of those microfibrils. So that's a polysaccharide.